Get your ears wrapped around the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. All the scoop you need to know, from college basketball to the NBA and even March Madness. News of your rising stars. Topics on and off the hardwood. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast.
GSMC Basketball Podcast here on the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Brice. Obviously, we have another jam-packed day of basketball for you. We're going to talk about all things basketball around the association and also in college ranks. So you want to stay tuned for all of that. This is your number one podcast for that right here. And you know what we do, we get right into it. And we're going to start off with some news coming out of the 76ers camp. Ben Simmons. They had their primetime game with the Milwaukee Bucks Saturday night, and Ben Simmons did not play that long. He restrained his back. It was something he was dealing with coming out of the All-Star break, but it wasn't anything I guess they felt like was serious, which is why he played clearly against the Milwaukee Bucks. But he restrained it, and he got an MRI. But they said they have a report that's saying Ben Simmons was emotional, and he's already been ruled out for Monday's game against the Hawks on NBA TV. So, very, very clearly, if you're a 76er fan, you're kind of a little worried. You don't know the severity of this injury. Sometimes back injuries and stuff like that can linger throughout the season where you feel good one day and all it takes is one bad landing, one bad tweak, and you're back on the shelf. So obviously this is something I'm sure they didn't want coming into the end of the season after getting out of the All-Star break, because you want to make sure that your star player is always healthy and ready at all times. It's one of those things where I think this will definitely be monitored by the 76ers. Obviously, when Ben Simmons left, they were absolutely annihilated against the Milwaukee Bucks on Saturday, but we don't know if Ben Simmons would have made that big of a difference just because Embiid didn't have a good game. Now, maybe it was a little different because Simmons wasn't there and I could have helped Embiid, but Embiid didn't had his second bad game against them. And, obviously, like I said, the Ben Simmons, he's one of the best, most talented passers we have in the league. So obviously when you lose that, and then the 76ers not really having another point guard on the roster, this is where their weakness kind of shows up if Ben Simmons goes down, is they don't have a point guard outside of him on the roster. So they don't have someone else who really run the show, which means it definitely has to run through Embiid. It's just, if Embiid's not on, it's just like, okay, where are you going to get your production from? Because you don't really have a guy who can make plays, and your best player, who could be your most dominant player, also isn't playing at the highest of levels either. So I'm sure they're going to be very cautious with Ben. I don't think, like I said, they're in any danger of losing in the playoffs or getting out of the playoffs. It's more just about maybe seeding. But even at that point, you may just feel like, you know what, we'll take anything. We just need to make sure Ben's healthy. Because you truly need to get the evaluation and know, okay, if this is truly going to be the last postseason and regular season that Simmons and Embiid are going to be on the same team potentially, then you want to make sure both of them are healthy to see if that's the decision that you have to make after the season is over. So I'm sure this is a decision that, will be thought about. But clearly, right now, during the season, Ben Simmons being healthy is a priority. And they need to make sure that he can get back and play for them ASAP whenever he can, because he is very crucial to their success. He's very crucial to what they can do. It really just depends on Ben. And hopefully, like I said, these back injuries are lingering, so hopefully it won't linger too much. I remember early in the season, Giannis had a back injury, and he played through a lot of it, but there were games he did miss because of it, because it was just sore, or maybe got a little tight on him. So, you don't really want to put players out there if they have some type of injury like that too much, because you don't want to strain it or potentially hurt them in the future with their back. So, very smart by the 76ers to rule them out, reevaluate, see what happens, and then we'll see when Ben Simmons can get back on the court. But also, a big event that happened this weekend was Dwayne Wade. Dwayne Wade has officially had his jersey retired by the Miami Heat. It is in the Raptors, and it is absolutely a fantastic honor for Dwayne Wade. Dwayne Wade is, they call it Wade County. He is probably their most popular and prestigious Miami Heat player that has ever played there, and the city loves him. LeBron came out and made a video talking about that Dwayne Wade deserves a statue. I agree with that. Dwayne Wade is just everything, and that he embodies everything that is Miami. And, he is a guy who, obviously was born in Chicago kid, but, his second home is Miami, and, he loves it there, and, he's done everything he can to be the best player he can be for that franchise at all times. He's always given them top percentage of what they can do, and, it's absolutely a great honor for him. Reflecting on his career, Dwayne Wade, guy came out, he was one of the few guys with the type of talent he had that stayed all 4 years in college. Because you don't usually hear of a 4-year player being a top 5 pick. And that's what Dwayne was. He was in the draft with LeBron and Chris Bosh and them. Carmelo. And, so obviously he was a little older than everybody coming into the league. But as soon as he came into the league, he was one of the best players. They called him Flash. He was a guy who, throughout his career, he never developed a 3-point shot that was lethal. Even though he was one of those streaky players where if he did start hitting it, this man could drop 9 threes on you. But Dwayne Wade was one of those guys who made all his money in the paint, driving, and mid-range. He was a mid-range assassin. And he also could get to the paint at will. And he was also one of the fastest players in the league. That's where he got the nickname Flash from. He was one of the hardest players to stay in front of. He could get past you with the quickness, especially in his prime. That's why, like I said, his third year in the league, he won a championship with Shaq, and, you saw the greatness of Dwayne, averaging 30 points in that finals. And he really is a guy who, obviously, when LeBron got there, he started having some injuries, and then, obviously, he got older. Because like I said, he was 3 years older than everybody else. He was dealing with things that they weren't dealing with because he was older. But though during his career, he even his last couple of years, coming off the bench, Dwayne Wade was still a factor. Dwayne Wade could still beat you. Dwayne Wade could still make plays. He was always a playmaker. He was always someone who had great athletic ability, speed, always did everything right, did it by the book. And, he's going to go down as, like I said, one of the best players to ever play the 2 guard. People consider him a top 5 shooting guard. Some people consider him behind Jordan and Michael. I mean, not Jordan and Michael, Kobe and Michael. Some people think he's the 3rd greatest shooting guard to ever play this game. It just depends on who you ask. I remember playing with him in the NBA Live games and 2K and dominating with him. He's always just been an icon for this league. He's a great ambassador for this league. He's a guy who also an entrepreneur. He used to be with guys with deals of Converse and other things, deals that you don't see a lot of NBA players take nowadays. And then he made his own deal and his own label, our own shoe in China. And that's why he's such an icon over there in China, because he went and marketed himself in China. He's not afraid to go outside the box and do different things and be successful doing it. And especially now that you've seen a lot of guys like Kelly Oubre, signing with Pumbaa, or Kawhi Leonard starting with New Balance, and, places that a lot of star NBA players never would sign with. You could say Dwayne Wade was one of the people who started that trend, because he was like, listen, you can still make a lot of money from advertisements and not be from the big brands. Because at the end of the day, if you're a big enough name, these companies will pay you to be their ambassador for their brand. And if you really have true fans, they're going to follow you and they'll buy your shoe no matter where it is. He did it overseas. There, other people doing it with maybe companies that you wouldn't think are as big. But it's one of the great things about it. He's just a great guy, great player. A pleasure watching him growing up. All the classic battles he's had. He's a guy who you just, even though he retired, you weren't ready for him to retire, but you knew he had everything he needed to retire. You always felt like the way he played, he could have probably still played, but obviously Dwayne Wade made the best decision that he felt was best for him. And now he's thriving in his post-career. He's living life to the best of his abilities, and that's really all you can ask for. So, again, congratulations to him getting his jersey retired. Like I said, he is Mr. Miami, Miami Heat, Wade County. You know, he embodies everything Miami Heat, and it was an honor that was well-deserved. A very well-deserved honor. But coming up next, we're going to talk about the Lakers and beating the Celtics in a thriller, Mark Cuban and the Mavs contesting a goaltending call during the Hawks game, and DeMarcus Cousins has been waived by the Los Angeles Lakers. All that here and more right here on the podcast.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Last segment, we talked about Ben Simmons and his back injury. There is no timetable currently on his return, but we hope it's not too long. Obviously, like I said, these back injuries can linger, so obviously 76er fans hope that this isn't going to take too long of recovery and he can make it back with a full bill of health. Also, we talked about Dwayne Wade getting his jersey retired, reflected a little bit on his career, about him, how he got the nickname Flash, just, a lot about Dwayne Wade. As this was a weekend to appreciate and give thanks for a man who is considered Mr. Miami, the guy of Wade County and just everything like that. Just great honor for him to be able to get your jersey retired. It's always great to see players get their jersey retired. Just organization realizing, you were very important to us and you helped increase the value of our organization. Miami's always been a first class organization too. So that's only been further, confirmed by their actions this past weekend, retiring Dwayne Wade's jersey. But now we're going to get some current news. The Lakers and Celtics played. Obviously, that's a historic rivalry. Two of the most historic franchises in NBA history, Lakers and the Boston Celtics, played in a thriller. Lakers ended up winning the game, by a couple of points. And, it was just a great game from start to finish. Jason Tatum went off in this game, had 40-plus points, and he played excellent. Jason Tatum, you look at this man, and you just kind of wonder, what is his ceiling? He has all the potential in the world to be a superstar. He shows that killer in him, as some people like to say, the ability to be one of the top players in the NBA. You really think he has the ability to do it based on what he did tonight and what he's been doing in these last few games. He has played excellent, especially in the absence of Kemba Walker, who's currently out right now. This is why I think this makes Boston such a dangerous team. Even today's loss against the Lakers, it just continues to further my case that they are a very dangerous team. They have 4 guys that can all get you 20. and if all of them are on in the playoffs, it's going to be extremely difficult to beat this Boston Celtics team 4 times. For any team. Especially if Jason Tatum continues to have performances like that. And then you got Kemba, who is one of the best shot makers in the league. And then, Jaylen Brown, who's an up-and-coming all-star player in this game. And then Gordon Hayward, we know Gordon Hayward can make plays. And so, it was great on their end. Obviously, they weren't able to come up with the victory, but great showing on their side. And obviously, the Lakers, Anthony Davis and LeBron dominating. LeBron had 29, Anthony Davis had 32. Kuzma had 16. Lakers have shown why they are a championship-ready team. In these close games against good teams, they have always been able to come out a lot on top in these games. They just make the plays down the stretch because they have when you have 2 of the top 5 best players in the game, one of them is going to make a play. You just feel either Anthony Davis going to make a play or LeBron going to make a play. And a lot of people are wondering who the closer would be. And I think LeBron knows he's probably going to have to be more of that closer, but he also knows Anthony Davis can close. So it's not like this has to be all on him or has to be all on AD. And sometimes if Kuzma's hot, he can close. It really just shows you the depth of the Lakers. They're a team that is very impressive. A very impressive team. They have all the potential in the world to be one of the best teams and to win it all because of their elite play. They have guys who know how to play, who's played in big games, played in tough moments, and have been able to come out on top in a lot of these games. Later, we're going to talk about another big matchup they're going to have this week because obviously it's a very exciting one, but, it's really just showed, they're really a team who has all the potential in the world to be one of, if not the best team that there potentially could be in all of the NBA. Next, we're going to get to some Mark Cuban talk. Mark Cuban and the Mavs are contesting to league office of a play that happened against the Atlanta Hawks in a game they lost, where Trae Young went to the rim and it was initially called a goaltend, or it was a goaltend, or I think it was a goaltend. I'm not 100. I think it was a goaltend, right? But then I think when they went to review, it wasn't a goaltend. But then what happened was, what really messed everything up was that the referee still counted the putback by John Collins. And that's what made the Mavericks very irate, because usually if it's a goaltending, no basket after that is counted, obviously. It's goaltending that stops the play. The referee's exact explanation was, well, we didn't mean to blow the whistle. It was inadvertent, so that's why it counted. So obviously it really confused you on the rules, and it kind of confused you, like, wait, what's going on? Wait, what was supposed to happen? So what the Dallas Mavericks want is they want to be able to replay the last, I believe, 12 seconds of the game, or 24 seconds of the game, and it be a jump ball, and then that will determine who actually wins that game. Usually things like this never pass with the league, because that's a lot of hassle, getting two teams together, basically, probably randomly, just somewhere. I don't know, I guess they gotta go to State Farm Arena, and just literally have NBA referees show up just to watch 14 to 20 seconds of a game, just to say, okay, well, we're going to replay it. If the Hawks still end up on top, then they'll get the win. If the Dallas wins, they'll get the win. It just is a lot of hassle trying to do something like that. And I don't think the league is going to really do that. I think if you're trying to get that, I don't think you're going to do it. Obviously, the NBA does not want to ever get in the way of games results. Even if there was a bad call that cost the team, they never want to change results or anything, because they know that's going to cause an uproar. And even the whole playback portion of it, they just feel like, that's not really what we want to do. I feel like they can maybe do it during the playoffs potentially, because obviously if the team's playing the same team and it wasn't the last game, they already got to play each other, so you could easily still do it. But outside of that, I think they're just going to continue to do what they do, and they're just going to stay with what they know. And it's like, yeah, maybe this was a bad call, but we're not going to undermine our referees and then change a call or tell them, hey, we need y'all all to fly back out there to Atlanta and watch these teams for the last however many seconds of the game and then give us a winner. Like, I just feel like that's, like, when would you do that? It's one thing if they were going to play again, because then you could just be like, okay, next time y'all play, we'll fix it. So now you have that one win lingering that you don't know if you got or not. But if it's something that both teams have to go out of their way to, I just don't think the NBA is going to do it. I just don't see them doing it. And they've never really done it in the past either. So, and lastly, DeMarcus Cousins has been cut by the Lakers, as a lot of people were surprised by this move, because obviously DeMarcus Cousins has been nursing an ACL tear that he suffered, and there were reports last week that he was expected to be back for the playoffs. With him being cut, now, does this mean they're not going to bring him back, or does that mean that, what does that mean? Now, people are saying that I think under rules, he can still work out with the Lakers. He can still attend Staples Center. He can still go to the practice facilities, training facilities, and still get and recover with the Lakers. Like, he doesn't, he can still be a part of that process. And I'm assuming the Lakers are going to still allow that to happen and still do those things. But I just think this means, obviously, it's almost like, I guess I don't want to say practice squad, but it basically just means like, okay, he's not a part of the team. The roster spot is available. I'm assuming this is for Markeith Morris, the brother of Marcus Morris, which I'll talk about later in the show with the Lakers signing him, coming in there. So I think that's maybe one of the reasons why they made this move with DeMarcus. But I think DeMarcus Cousins feels like that he has, he's not in no rush. This isn't a big deal to him. He still can train. He can still recover. And then if he gets healthy, they could easily sign him back or wait till after the playoffs and sign. I don't think this is like we're cutting him and you got to go to a new team type of thing. I think this is, we're cutting you to create space on our roster, but you can still work out, train, get better with us. And then whenever that time comes, we will bring you back into the fold and you will be part of this team. It was an interesting decision, but these are decisions that I think NBA teams make on a daily basis, so you can't really hate on it, can't be mad at it. But coming up next, Chris Paul, continuing his stellar play. We're going to talk about that. Lakers and Clippers have been rescheduled for April 9th. Lakers pick up the other Morris twin, Markieff. And is Trae Young the most underrated 30-10 guy in the NBA? All that right here and more on the podcast.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the podcast, the GSMC basketball podcast, that is. Last segment, we talked about a multitude of things. We talked about, obviously, the Clippers and Lakers having a great game. Both sides of it, both teams playing at a high level. Both teams have potential to make a deep playoff run. Could this potentially be an NBA Finals matchup preview? Well, you never know. You really don't know. But it was definitely one of the best primetime games that the NBA has put on all season long, too. So that's obviously a great thing. When the big games that you advertise usually end up being some of your best games. Also, we talked about Mark Cuban and the Mavs protesting a goaltending call against the Atlanta Hawks, trying to get that to be replayed so then they could potentially get the win. And obviously, DeMarcus Cousins getting cut by the Lakers. Obviously surprising for a lot of people, but, it happened. And, I think it's one of those things that people didn't see coming, but I understand why it was done. So now we're going to talk about CP3. CP3 is continuing his stellar play, still playing at a high level at his age. A season where a lot of people thought he was done for. He didn't have anything left in the tank. He needed to sit down. He needed to retire. He was too injury prone, and still is continuing his fantastic season with Oklahoma City Thunder, as they are one of the most clutch teams in the NBA. And on top of that, don't forget this too. Chris is leading a team to one of the most clutch, they're basically one of the most clutch teams in the league, basically, based off statistics. And so, obviously, they're very well coached in the last minute. Obviously, him and Dennis Schroeder have been in such a great combination, and it's helped Dennis Schroeder so much. Dennis Schroeder, a guy who's kind of been lost in the shuffle, but has always gotten play time. It's just, is he a definitive starting point guard in this league? Is he just a top end back, off the bench guy? What role suits him best? I think everybody both puts in the work and tries to do what they have to do to be successful at all times. But, obviously Chris Paul is just continuing to stellar play. I know he's scoring when needs to, still making plays for his teammates. Chris Paul has always been a playmaker. He has always been one of the best playmaking point guards we have in this league. That has never changed. Listen, vision and passing, you never lose that. It's just not something that diminishes. Unless your eyesight gets bad, that you're not losing your vision of the court. Unless you get weaker and can't throw the same precise and crisp passes, that's going to stay. You might lose the lift and shooting, and you might lose your explosiveness, and you might lose the ability to get to the rim. But the one thing that he always has and will always have is the playmaking ability to make plays for others. And that's what has made this Thunder team, a young Thunder team, so successful. The fact that he can make plays for others. Because not everybody can do that. And he's one of the best to ever have done it. So I just want to give recognition and credit to him and everything he's done. But in other news, the Lakers and Clippers have been rescheduled to April 9th. This is the game that they canceled because they needed time to grieve over the Kobe Bryant passing. Rest in peace. And NBA has agreed to do it on April 9th. Obviously, I feel like since this game's pretty late in the year, there's a chance that both teams may not be going too hard during that game, because if playoff spots have been solidified and everything like that, there really is no point to really play your guys in that game at that point. So that game may have just lost some value, basically, just because it's going to be unlikely. I highly doubt both teams are going to be playing their stars in that game unless they were still battling to clinch something like, I don't know, maybe Clippers are within one game of the Lakers for the number one seed. I mean, even that they might not. I mean, I don't know. I mean, they both play in the same venue, so I highly doubt they don't care who gets home court. They're going to be playing in the same venue. If you think about that series, though, you really about to be rested, because you don't have to do no traveling or nothing. You just literally just go back to your house. All right, game 2 coming up, game 3. It feels like you have 4. If it goes 7 games, it feels like you have 7 straight home games. Even though the stadium's going to look like Clippers, are going to look like Lakers. It's like, it just depends. Whoever comes out more. That's honestly who it depends. Honestly, a lot of those fans, I'm pretty sure just watching it to see 2 LA teams go at it. So it's definitely going to be something that is very interesting, very impressive, and very just intriguing to see moving forward what happens in that game. And, obviously Patrick Patterson came out and said that they don't even want to play in the game just because they feel like it's so late in the season, it's not going to be important. I don't really feel the need to go above and beyond for this game, knowing that this isn't probably going to mean that much at that point in the season. With more Laker news, the Lakers picked up Markieff Morris from the Phoenix Suns as he was bought out and was picked up. This is an interesting move. Obviously Marcus Morris earlier in the week was traded to the Clippers before the trade deadline, on the trade deadline day. And now his brother's going to the Lakers. I wouldn't be surprised if he did that out of spite, just because he was just like, oh, I'm going to play against you. So, it's going to be interesting, the Morris twins in this Lakers-Clippers rivalry now, and seeing what they bring to the table. Obviously, Marcus Morris has been considered the best out of the 2 players, but both have similar skill sets. So it's not like you're getting a different skill set with Marcus and a different skill set with Markieff. It's just a matter of they feel like Marcus just does the skill set better than Markieff, but both can probably play valuable minutes for both sides. Both are going to be a part of their second units and add versatility and flexibility to the team. Obviously, the Lakers and the Clippers have to get them some time to get integrated with this new team and see what happens when it gets down to it. So it'll be interesting to see what happens when it comes to that. I mean, obviously, I think this was a good move. Obviously, this is probably one of the reasons why they did let go of DeMarcus Cousins to bring him in and just give him another active body they can use, add some versatility on the defensive end, and be able to stretch the floor a little bit because Marquise and Marcus have the similar skill sets, and so should be able to do the same things that each other can do. So it adds the same flexibility to both sides of both teams at the end of the day. And lastly, I just want to get into a quick discussion. There's a player in the league that's averaging 30 and 10. His name's Trae Young. But I do feel like outside of Atlanta, Trae Young has not been talked about too much. Obviously, we could say that because, obviously he has not been on a great team this year. So obviously, if you're not winning games, you're not going to be talked about a lot. Some people feel like, well, Zion gets a lot of hype and the Pelicans are a winning team. Well, Zion had a lot of hype coming in from college. Trae had some hype, but not to the same or anywhere close to the same degree as Zion. But yet Trae has had a fantastic year, averaging 30 and 10, and almost doing it on a nightly basis. So, some people wondering, is this one of the most underrated 30 and 10 seasons? Because obviously recently he just dropped 50 against the Miami Heat, and that's when that question was raised. Trae's been playing like this all season long. And now he has a 50 burger against the Miami Heat, and now people want to talk about the performances. So, obviously, Trae is a superstar here in Atlanta. Some people think he is getting to very, very high ranks of popularity. He is the one guy that if you're a Hawks fan, you may have more of an excitement to go watch, which is Trae. It's something that I think definitely is interesting. And I just feel like, potentially he could be underrated by what he's done. Obviously, eventually he has to start winning games. The Hawks have to start winning games for his recognition and his appreciation to grow around the league. But you cannot be mad that Trae Young could be dropping 30 and 10 on your team every night. And, it's just going to be important for him to come out there and play at a high level and continue to finish the season the way he's been playing. Because obviously we already know about the how everybody can compare him and Luka together as far as their whole careers go. But coming up next, Lance Stevenson eyeing an NBA return. Zion and LeBron play against each other this week. What to expect? And are the Bucks going to get to 70 wins this season? All that and more, my thoughts, right here on the podcast.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Last segment, we talked about Chris Paul continuing his stellar play for the Oklahoma City Thunder at his age, still playing at a high level, obviously an All-Star game this year, dunking in the All-Star game. Chris Paul's just been defying all types of things this year and continuing to show why he's one of the best players to ever play this game. Lakers and Clippers have it rescheduled for April 9th, so if you're interested in that game, that will be when the game will be rescheduled, so you will be able to get them 4 times during the regular season, for sure. Lakers pick up the Owen Morris twin, so now the Clippers have Marcus Morris, and the Lakers have Markieff Morris. So obviously that's a very big thing for them, and a very big thing in general. And also, I also talked about if Trae Young is the most underrated 30 and 10 guy in the league, and I gave my thoughts on that subject. But now to get into the news, Lance Stevenson, yes, Lance Stevenson, is eyeing a return to the NBA. Just getting done with his China League season, averaging 26 a game in the China League, looking to return to the NBA. So we'll have to see if any team potentially is interested in picking up a guy like Lance Stevenson. Lance Stevenson can be very valuable. Lance is a playmaker. He can make plays out there. The only problem with Lance is sometimes he's very erratic with his decision making. So you kind of get the good with the bad, but he's also one of the more talented scorers in the league at the time, because he may not have a great 3-point shot, but he's great at getting to the rim and hitting the mid-range. So it's definitely something I think teams will look into, maybe picking up a Lance, because, you know, you can't really sleep on Lance. You can't really, you know, rule him out or anything like that. You know, he's a very talented player, and he's always been a very talented player. So you can't hate on that. But I think if Lance goes to a team he can help, and so you definitely can't look, you know, away from him if you're a team who needs playmaking. Obviously, he was in the Lakers last year. I don't think he'll go back this year, clearly. I think Clippers are pretty much stacked their roster, so maybe another team, potentially, maybe OKC potentially, maybe the Miami Heat potentially, other teams like that. We really don't know. We'll have to see what people think and what decisions are made. We'll have to see what people want, and we'll have to see which teams, if any team picks up Lance this the rest of the season going into the playoffs. But next, we're going to get into some talk about a big matchup this week, a matchup a lot of people have been waiting for. Zion Williamson versus LeBron James, as the Pelicans play the Lakers this week. Obviously, this is a very big matchup that everybody has wanted to see all season long, because people look at Zion as the new next current young face of the league, and they look at LeBron. Obviously, he's been the face of the league since he came into the league. So obviously, this is a matchup that's going to be big. You would expect at some points them to be guarding each other. Interesting to see them go one-on-one. Obviously, this is one of the few guys LeBron cannot potentially bully his way into the paint, because Zion's a very big guy and also has the speed and quickness to keep up with LeBron James, which I think makes a very excellent matchup. And obviously, the Pelicans need this game overall just to for the playoffs, to make a playoff push. So they need this game. They need to be able to be successful and get this win. It's going to be tough, though. Pelicans so far have struggled to beat the Lakers this year, so maybe Zion can make the difference in this game. And if he has one of his Zion games, and LeBron has a big game himself, I'm sure everybody's going to be excited to see that game. I'm sure that game's in prime time this week, and a lot of people are going to tune into it for those two, because, you know, these are the type of games I think NBA fans, they love to see. I mean, this is one of the reasons why, if this goes really well, a lot of people would want Pelicans and Lakers in the first round of the Western Conference playoffs, because just even if the Pelicans get swept, it's just seeing Zion versus LeBron. That's what people want to see. Sometimes, you know, the matchup overweighs the matchup, and what I mean is the individual matchup outweighs the team matchup. Because yes, the Lakers are the clearly superior team, but what you really want to see is, how does Zion play against a team like the Lakers? How does he play against a player like LeBron James? How does he play against an Anthony Davis? I'm sure they're going to have him on him too, and vice versa. And if it's exciting and it's what everybody expects, then I'm sure everybody will still be happy with the result, because that's overall what they really want to see, is that. The wins and losses are great. If we can maybe Pelicans win a game, get a fifth game, that's great. But I'm sure the matchup is just really what everybody would rather see and prefer to want to see at the end of the day. You know, obviously, Pelicans, like I said, making the playoff push. Lakers just trying to stay consistent, stay the number one seed, don't let any ground up, and just continue to play at a high level. And we're just hoping for the best. We're hoping for just great basketball, because that's what we want as fans. We want great basketball, all times. And lastly, talk about the Milwaukee Bucks. The Milwaukee Bucks right now are on pace to win 70 games this year. They have just recently clinched a playoff spot, which they've done in the fewest amount of games of any team in NBA history. They're still in single-digit losses this late into the season. They are one of the best teams in the league. They truly are, because they They do it all. You know, they've been one of the best defensive teams since Mike Budenholzer has been there. They have been tenacious defensively. Giannis is one of the best defenders. Eric Bledsoe is one of the better defenders. The Lopez twins, you know, they're very elite defensively. They can shut you down and suffocate you. And then they're also one of the best offensive teams. That's why they win a lot of games in blowout situations. You know, because you got Giannis who can score, and then Dante DiVincenzo has been a big pickup for them. Dante DiVincenzo's been hurt, and he hasn't really played for the Bucks, and now he's healthy, and you can see the playmaking ability that he has with his shooting range, and you can get to the rim to the basket. Then you also picked up Wesley Matthews, which you had to pick up to kind of neutralize the loss of Michael Brogdon. And I feel like he's played well. And just overall, they have a very well put together team. Now, some people still think, in retrospect, that they don't have enough offensively to win the championship. They think this Milwaukee Bucks team is good enough to get it out of the Eastern Conference. But when they play a team, if they do play, especially when they play one of the LA teams, they feel like they don't have enough scoring. Where with the Clippers, you know, Kawhi, Paul George, Lou Williams. Those are your three top scorers. With the Bucks, it's Giannis. If then Chris Middleton, but that's going to be the key, really. Can Chris Middleton be just as good as whoever the team they're playing second stars? Like, again, Lakers, LeBron, AD, you know they're going to be putting up close to 25 a night both. Can Chris Middleton be that guy? Can he put up 25 if Giannis puts up 30 or 40? That's going to be the key to their success. And he has developed himself into such a great player. He's been an all-star 2 years in a row. And he's one of the reasons why they're in position to have a 70-win season. Now, obviously, we'll have to see because, you know, obviously since they clinched a playoff spot, that's the first step. If they clinch number 1 seed and they ain't have 70 wins yet, you can see them start sitting guys. And that might be what keeps them from getting that 70-win plateau. But, you know, these guys are, they're some of the best in the league. And they deserve all the recognition in the world. They have played and been dominant for 2 years in the regular season. They got to Eastern Conference Finals last year. So I don't see why they wouldn't be able to at least challenge to get back this year at the same time. There's a lot of potential talent. And there's a lot of potential ability here with the Milwaukee Bucks. The Milwaukee Bucks have plenty of time and plenty of ability. And it'll be interesting to see what happens in the playoffs, but I think they definitely have all the talent and potential in the world to make 70-win season happen for them and be very successful in that regard. So, there you go with the Milwaukee Bucks on that subject. But coming up next, we're going to get to some college basketball talk. I'm going to talk about all the latest upsets that happened this past weekend and also give you an update on the new polls.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Last segment, we talked about obviously a lot of things around the league. We talked about Lance Stephenson behind his NBA return, potentially returning to the NBA. Obviously, Lance Stephenson is someone that I think is a playmaking guard, so he'll definitely be considered by maybe some teams trying to go into the playoffs. But there is no guarantee that he will be picked up. Zion and LeBron are expected to play each other this week. Well, we'll play each other this week. Obviously, this is a big matchup that a lot of people want to see. A lot of people are excited to see and are very curious to see what actually happens when these two meet the court, and we talked about what to expect from that. And are the Bucks going to get 70 wins? I discussed that here, where I talk about how if I think Milwaukee, is going to get 70, how good they are, and how their team is constructed, and why they're so good and why they're so dominant most games. But obviously now we're getting into your college basketball, scores, upsets, all of that good stuff. And obviously we got to start with any upsets or anything that happened around the league, keep y'all up to date at all times. So first upset came on Thursday. Arizona State beat number 14 Oregon 77-72. Oregon has not been a good road team all this year. They have struggled on the road tremendously. This was just another one of the road woes. Big loss for them. Just losing that momentum going into the tournament, at least from this day. And, obviously you never want to lose games like this, but it happens, and you just hope for the best, and you really hope you can bounce back from it. Obviously another game, Ohio State, Iowa, 25-20. Iowa was able to pick up the win 85-76. Iowa is a team that has one of the best scorers in the nation in Garza. And I think that you can't sleep on that if you're a team. This team can score, and they can score with the best of them. And that's a fact. Jack. Et cetera and so forth. And obviously we get to the big Saturday games. Big upset. Number 2 Gonzaga goes down to number 23 BYU. This was the game everybody was circling as the last game that Gonzaga probably would lose or could lose, because BYU has beaten them in previous years, and BYU is a very good team, a team that's going to make the tournament and can potentially make a run deep in the tournament. And beating number 2 Gonzaga the way they did was a very impressive victory for them. And honestly, they were able to stay on from the start, and BYU just played one of the best games. And it was senior night for BYU, so obviously there was actually that added motivation. And just a big, great win for them. Obviously, Gonzaga losing this game, loses some ground, because they were projected to be a number 1 seed. Now they might be on the number 2 seed line because of this loss. So we'll have to see what happens when the committee gives maybe some updated rankings on who's number 1 seeds, number 2 seeds, number 3 seeds, and etc. A big game coming out of Oregon and Arizona. Obviously, I told you Oregon lost early in the week and upset Arizona State, but they were able to rebound and redeem themselves against the Arizona on the road. So this was a very rare road win for Oregon, but they were able to win in overtime, 73-72. They won it on the last shot of the game, and this is one of the better games the Pac-12 has had all year. And obviously, this is big for Oregon to kind of alleviate the blow they had losing to Arizona State, beating Arizona, and it was a great game from start to finish. And obviously, congratulations to them getting this victory. That really helped them out. Obviously, UNLV upsetting the last undefeated team in the country, and San Diego State 66-63. So this will probably drop San Diego State a couple of seeds down, but they'll still make the tournament. It's just obviously with the conference they play in, it's not that strong, so you don't have a lot of strong quality wins. So really, undefeated was the only way they could even get a number 1 spot. Now they won't. They might get number 3, number 4. We'll have to see. Don't worry, San Diego State is still a dangerous team. But obviously, this is a huge win for the Rebels. They probably won't make the tournament, but if they can make a run in their tournament, they may be able to get a bid potentially. This might not be the last time they face each other, and San Diego State might be able to get this win back or this loss back. Other games, Kentucky was able to pull out a tough victory against Florida, 65-59. Kentucky's really hit their stride recently, playing some of their best basketball, and they're doing it even though the toughest part of their schedule. And so obviously Kentucky has been coming out here improving game by game. And, with Cal Power always recruiting those 5-star recruits, all they can do is get better throughout the year. And if they continue to get better, that only can equal success for them long term and give them what they need to do so they can be successful and win a championship. Florida State beats NC State. Obviously, this was a close game. The Wolfpack are definitely a tough team. But they weren't able to get 2 upsets in a row. After destroying Duke early in the week, they came back and they were humbled by Florida State 67-61. After the first half, it looked like NC State might be able to get another upset, but Florida State was able to turn it on in the second half, outscoring them by about 11 in the second half. So obviously Florida State was able to find their stride, find their offense, and do what they got to do out there to be successful, and so on and so forth. UCLA gets an upset over number 18 Colorado, 70-63. Obviously, UCLA hasn't had has had a pretty decent season. This is going to help them in terms of maybe making the tournament, potentially beating a team like Colorado, a ranked team. These are always crucial wins, good quality wins right now to improve your resume this late into the season. So it's always important to get wins like this. So Colorado took this L, but UCLA was able to improve their resume. West Virginia was upset by TCU in overtime, 67-60. Obviously, TCU getting a big win, trying to hang on to any hopes potentially they have to make the tournament. Obviously, a big win beating West Virginia, a quality win on the resume. Probably won't be enough, but you got to still try at this point in the season. Villanova defeats Xavier 64-55. Villanova getting back on track. Memphis beating Houston 60-59, close game. Houston was number 22 in the country, and they lost to Memphis. So Memphis, remember, started the season as a top 10 team, and after that loss to Georgia, really kind of started falling apart, but now might be trying to get their stride back and trying to be successful later. Obviously, Auburn came back and beat Tennessee 73-66. Auburn was down double digits early in the game, was able to come back in the second half and be able to win. And obviously that's big because it shows the resilience of Auburn. Auburn has been one of the best home teams all year. All of their losses have came on the road. So obviously, if they lost to Tennessee at home, this would be a big loss for them. But obviously winning this game helps them be able to bounce back and be able to contribute at a high level like they've always been able to. And obviously in the big game of the day, Baylor and Kansas. Kansas beats Baylor and now will become the new number 1 team in the country, 64-61. Kansas just, they came out there. It was a tightly contested game, honestly. Both teams looked evenly matched. It was just about who was going to make the most plays, and Kansas just made the most plays at the end of the day. And that gave them the W. And, congratulations to Kansas. They played well. They deserved it. They've done everything they need to do to be successful out there, and they've just done what they had to do to win a game. The Providence upsets Marquette. Obviously a big game because, obviously Marquette was a ranked team. Every win and loss at this point counts tremendously. Everybody needs them. Everybody is trying to make and solidify their spots in the tournament and everything. So, but now we're going to talk about the top 10 of the AP 25 poll. Give y'all the top 10. Obviously, like I said, Kansas is the new number 1 team in the country after defeating Baylor. Now, here's the thing, though. Baylor just went down 1 spot. They're now the number 2 team in the country. So, they're still top 2, but the top 2 are coming right out of the Big 12. So, that shows you how great of a basketball power they really are up there in the Big 12. Number 3, Gonzaga. Obviously, just moving a spot down. Number 4, Dayton. Still chugging, still being one of the best teams. San Diego State dropped 1 spot. It's the 5th. Florida State is now 6th in the country. Duke, even after that upset, the way they lost, they didn't drop down that many spots. They're still 7th in the country right now. Number 8 is Kentucky, like I said, playing some of their best college basketball right now, looking real good going into the tournament, look like they have all the potential in the world to be there at the end of the day. Number 9, Maryland. Maryland has won so many games in a row. They have played at a high level. And, Maryland is definitely a team that a lot of people don't talk about, but you need to look out for when it comes around for tournament time. And then to round it out, Creighton is number 10. Creighton getting into the top 10, putting a string of impressive wins together against quality opponents, and now getting into the top 10, which will only help them in terms of seeding when it comes to the NCAA tournament when that time comes around. So it sounds like everything's just going great for them right now, and that's pretty much what's going on. We're about to hit March, so March Madness is upon us, and I know, like I said, it's a very exciting time in college basketball. But coming up next, we're going to talk about how important is a Robin to a Batman, and maybe some other basketball thoughts right here on the podcast. You want to stay tuned for that last segment coming up right here.
Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? The GSMC College Football Podcast is your ticket to all things college football. Join us as we talk college football from the national championship, the college rivalries, the bowl game, to the Heisman Trophy. To which conference is the best? we've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, the Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between. Download the GSMC College Football Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Last week we talked about college basketball scores, upsets from the weekend. I also gave you the rundown, the top 10 of the AP poll. We will release the AP poll. So obviously, like I said, obviously March Madness is coming. It's upon us. If you're excited for it, be excited. With the amount of upsets that have happened this year in college basketball, you really don't know who's going to win it all. Like, we can sit here and say, oh, yeah, you need the top 4 teams, but the way upsets happen, you don't really know. You really don't know. You kind of just got to come into the situation and just kind of hope for the best. I'm sure with this type of year, this is probably the worst year to have a bracket, because it's just impossible to know who's going to dominate all the way through and who isn't. I would not be surprised if a lower seed makes it to the Final Four / National Championship, in my opinion. So that's just me. But it just creates a lot of intrigue and excitement for basketball, clearly so. But anyway, so we have this dilemma going on. Now, I said I was going to talk about how important a Robin is to a Batman. But I also said we're going to talk about random things. But we're going to talk about something first before we get to the Batman and Robin. So what I'm alluding to here is this. There is kind of this, what they say, an NBA ref crisis, as you could say, where obviously officiating has been very suspect in a lot of games for many years, for the last few years. Obviously, you've seen a lot of teams complain to the league, try to file reports and different things, try to get the league to try to change something and make officiating better. Obviously, the league's trying to protect their referees and trying to, not put them in a negative light, even though people feel like the 2-minute report does that, because you're basically admitting that the referee made mistakes. And I think it just creates this very wide division between players and coaches and refs, because it's almost like as a player, you feel like you don't know how coming into this game they're going to call it. I mean, obviously, you kind of have a scouting report on referees, too, where okay, they usually call this, but they don't usually call that. And then, you have that one game where they start calling it, and you're just like, what? And it's one of those things where I think it creates an issue between the players and the league that people want changed. And people are looking to the league to see, okay, so when are you going to change it? When are you going to do what you need to do to make sure we don't deal with these similar situations and deal with the same things that we've ever dealt with? I think, obviously, for example, the Mark Cuban thing. And obviously, you remember I think Houston played the Warriors last year. And just, you look at the game and you see a lot of missed calls. And I know some people don't like to blame refs and say, okay, that's just how sometimes it goes. But, some teams do feel like they're targeted by refs. They feel like they truly are told that, hey, we missed something. That's me. That's on me. People like to talk about how sometimes you have to use common sense as your referee. And that's something that the game has lacked, is common sense, because the referees are trying so hard to appease league office that even in their mind, they could know, okay, this might not be right. They know rules-wise, well, we have to go with what the rules say. And I think the league needs to do a better job empowering the referees to use their common sense more. If something doesn't seem right, check it out. Kind of give referees that chance to override some things. Don't just sit there and not feel like you need to change anything, because if you don't, what you're doing then at that point is now players and organizations feel like that y'all are not trying to give them answers. You're not trying to help. You're not trying to improve the situation. And obviously that's not what you want. You don't want them. And, you know, that's kind of how it goes. And, you know, I think it's just one of those things that I think the league has to really come to a resolution with the referees. They need to talk to the referees because the referees have a union. Don't forget, referees have a union, and they need to talk to them and they need to figure out, okay, so what would you think is the best way to solve these issues? I think sometimes we try to make it too much about the league. The league wants a certain agenda, but why don't you ask the referees what's best? Why don't you let them give input so then they can feel like, because they're the ones out here refereeing and officiating. They maybe can tell you, okay, well, if we let this happen, or you have us give us this power, if you let this happen, we're going to be able to let you know and tell you what's the best way for us to be successful. But again, it just depends if they're going to give them the opportunity and the potential for it. Because some don't. Some don't. And we don't want more of these issues. We don't want players chewing out refs. Because now the referees are now getting fed up, so now they're just quick to throw tees because they're just like, listen, you get in my face. People been getting in my face all year. I'm tired of it, and so now they're just gonna start teeing you up, and it just makes the game kind of sometimes unfun when it feels like there's a little bit of a battle going on between the players on the court, the coaches, and then the referees and the officiators. And now I feel like you don't want that. You do not want that in your league. You do not want that in your game. So clearly that's something that needs to change, something that needs to be adjusted. And like I said, I think the league knows it. I just think they need to be more active in trying to make changes that are necessary so that way everybody can be happy at the end of the day and there isn't as many issues at the end of the day as it seems like there is now. Because like I said, you don't want any more teams trying to sit here and protest you and basically, you know, they find players or coaches who say things about the officials, but sometimes if the officials were that bad, something needs to be said. Like you can't let it go. I mean, there was even a video of a G League coach. He went off. He was just like, look, we were cheated. Referees were trash. And like literally that's what he said. He was just like, there's no excuse for it. So, but now we're going to get into some conversation now about how important a Robin is to a Batman. Obviously we know what that means, what that entitles. And obviously that means you're the second best player probably on your team, but you're basically also who keeps the team afloat just as much as the Batman keeps the team afloat. And sometimes you will be called upon to take over. And I think, you know, all these teams have all this potential. Obviously, you know, Giannis with Chris Middleton, LeBron and Anthony Davis, Kawhi and Paul George. You know, it's important to have that Robin. Back in the day, you know, you used to be able to win with maybe a star, and then a lot of good players. Now, you need those two stars. You need a guy who can work very well off of the main star. If you do that, it gives you the most success and it gives you the most chance to be successful on the court and win a championship. I mean, we've been entered a time where you need 3 stars. If you have a third star, which is just maybe a larger part of the Bat family, it just contributes to a more successful chance that you have at winning and a more successful chance you have at being successful. Without a Robin, teams sometimes fall apart. Because you have a bunch of role players, but you don't have that one player who can get you those buckets or step up for you if you struggle. Every team would want that. They want somebody who can step up for them if they struggle. So it's going to be very important that, you know, if you're a top team, that your Batman and Robins fit also. Because sometimes the Robin wants to be Batman. And if that's the case, sometimes that can mess chemistry up. And that can cause issues among the team. And obviously these are things that you don't want on your team. So that's just my little info on the Batman Robin thing. Never know, I might go into more detail about it in a later show or potentially, but we're gonna have to see. But we have run out of time here. Thank you for listening to the GSMC Basketball Podcast here on the GSMC Podcast Network. We appreciate you tuning in, listening to all things basketball with me, and I hope you're back for the next show and for future shows to come. Please don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you, and have a good day.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.